the Parsis in India, their population was never more than about 150,000. And the reason for that is that we did not convert from inside to outside or from outside to inside and did not intermarry. The actual name of the prophet was Zarathustra. Zarathustra, and the Greeks, and they wrote his name as Zoroaster. Inner meaning, it is explained that Zarathustra means one having a higher consciousness. The drink somras, which is there in the Hindu religion, even in the Zoroastrian religion, it is called homa juice, and it is made from a twig of a particular plant. Okay, a very small amount of the twig is pounded with water, goat's milk, and well water, and pomegranate leaves, and that drink is made, which is health giving, healing, and energy giving.
We have done a few episodes on Hinduism and our spiritual history. Going ahead, we'll definitely explore other religions as well. Understanding other religions helps us to have a better understanding of our own religion and the overall human history. We all know the Iranis and the Parsis. This one is a bit heavy discussion on Zoroastrianism. How the religion started, the history of the religion, the religious beliefs. Ramiyar Karanjia sir is a PhD scholar and is one of the most renowned spokesperson on Zoroastrianism. Whichever religion you follow, make sure you share this episode with as many people as you can. Subscribe to the iRonik show on YouTube and don't miss out to follow us on Spotify. This one with Ramiyar Karanjia. Enjoy. Ramya sir, welcome to the iRonik show.
Thank you, Ronik.
I have been waiting for this podcast to happen for a long time, and finally, we are sitting together and we can have a lot of discussions on the iRonik show. We have done a bunch of episodes on Hindu gods, Hindu spiritual history, if I have to say. So now, moving ahead, we wanted to bring in fresh perspectives and talk about other religions as well, because I believe when you talk about other religions, when you hear from people from other religious beliefs, you get a better understanding of your own religion.
Yeah, that's true.
Right. So that's why we wanted to have someone like you who is a really knowledgeable person when it comes to Zoroastrianism. So before I speak about Zoroastrianism, I have a very light-hearted question with you.
Sure.
Why are Parsis so rich? Why are mostly Parsis so rich?
See, there are two answers to that. One is there is a misconception about that, because honestly, all Parsis are not rich. But those who are in the limelight are the richer ones. That's why people feel that all Parsis are rich. But pro rata, if you see percentage wise, then yes, most Parsis are middle class, upper middle class, and even wealthy. And the reason for that is twofold. First is that we have never considered wealth as something negative. Wealth has always been considered as something positive, a tool which God has given for the good of the world. So, creation of wealth in Zoroastrian religion is a very positive religious virtue.
Okay.
Yeah. And the second thing, there is an element of faith and belief in God, which of course all religion teaches, and Zoroastrian religion also teaches that. So, if you see in India, much of the wealth among the Parsis has come from taking risk.
Right.
In the previous generations, the Parsis were generally seafarers. I think every Indian must have heard the name of Sir Jamshedji Jijibai and Petits, etc. So these were people who were seafarers, who made their wealth, risking their lives and limbs, and then used that wealth for the benefit of the people. Secondly, they are also in business. Even a business involves an element of risk. But if you have confidence in yourself, if you have confidence in your ability, if you have confidence in God, then again, there is a much higher chance that you will succeed in your venture. So, on one hand, I'll agree with you that pro rata Parsis are more wealthy, but among Parsis there are people who are rich, really below the what we call the middle class line. And there are several trust funds among the Parsis and individual philanthropists also who see that they do help people who are below the poverty line, below the level where they can't make two ends meet. And most of these are not only for Parsis, because we believe that we should help all humanity. So that's why but first we tend to look after our own. So that's why there are lots of charity funds and trusts which help those who are underprivileged, those who have not been blessed by wealth.
I think 90% of us identify passes with the three words that everyone normally says: good words, good deeds, good thoughts, right?
Yes.
And even if you speak about the wealthiest Parsi that we have, Sir Ratan Tata, uh, I mean, that completely speaks volume. The kind of effort that he has put into uplift the entire Indian society. Be it, I mean, I'm not talking about only the Parsi religion. He has contributed to the entire Indian economy, to the entire Indian society. So I think that speaks of the cultural values or the thoughts of a Parsi.
Yes, that is one of the basic virtues of Zoroastrian religion. But if you go to see, all religions preach their doctrine, but Zoroastrian religion puts a greater emphasis on that. So the three words that you said are humata.
Mm.
Humata means a good thought.
Mata.
Humata.
Okay.
From that comes hukta. Hukta means a good word. And from that comes varshta. Varshta means a good action. So whenever there is a good thought, generally it will result in a good word. And when good thoughts and words come together and they are in balance, then they'll definitely result in good deeds. So Zoroastrian religion puts a great emphasis on this triumvirate of virtues.
Okay. Sir, my next question is, now there is some confusion regarding Irani and Parsis. So, what are the similarities and what is the difference?
Yeah, see, we often talk about, when we talk about Parsis, we talk about Iranis also, like the ubiquitous Irani restaurants and such things are very well known. And like that, our Irani brethren are well known. So, first, let us see what is a Parsi.
Right.
Yeah. So, we Parsis had come from Iran to India about 1300 years back, after the downfall of the last Zoroastrian empire, the Sasanian Empire. Okay. Before that, most of our kings belong to the three main historical dynasties, and their origins were humble. They were from a small kingdom. And the name of that small kingdom was called Parsa. So that's why these kings call themselves Parsis. Like King Darius the Great, who is very well known, the Achaemenian king.
Hmm.
He, in one of his rock records, says, I am Parsa, son of a Parsa. So, in his very words, I would say, Parsaya, Parsaya Putra.
Okay.
So, generally, the term Parsa had been used in Iran by all those who were subjects of the kings of Parsa. And so, when these people came from Iran to India, the general term that was used for them was Parsis. So, it has
Okay.
got already two meanings inside it. One is a historical and an ethnological, and second is a religious. So, Parsis are people who originated from Pars in Iran and who follow the Zoroastrian religion.
Okay. Okay.
Now, 1300 years back, only a few thousand of these people had come from Iran to India. Still, millions of them were still back in Iran for one reason or the other. And they were under Islamic kings, Mongol kings, Tartar kings, Huns, and all such kings. And they were generally treated as third grade citizens. And they had to face a lot of atrocities. So when the Parsis in India in the last 200 years came to know that our brethren are undergoing great suffering and turmoil in Iran even today, so 200 years back, the Parsis sent money and people from India to Iran. to get back some of those brethren from Iran to India. So these people are then known as Iranis. So basically, they are also from they are also Zoroastrians. They are also from Iran Pars. The only difference is that they came about 1,000 years after the Parsis came.
Okay.
And so naturally, many of their traits, their food habits, their language is a bit different from the Parsis. And of course, some of the prayers, because in this 1,000 years that had gone by, a lot of changes had come about. But these were people, these Iranis were people who had undergone a lot of trouble in Iran, lot of atrocities. And so they have been extra kind, extra generous, extra caring, because they and their ancestors have undergone a lot of problems. So that's where we see the difference between Parsis and Iranis. I hope now you understand that Parsis are those who came 1,300 years ago, and Iranis are those who came about 300 years back.
Okay. Okay. So Ramir sir, my next question to you is again about the Parsis. It's on the Parsi population that we have. So what I read, I mean, I think maybe a month back or so, the overall Parsi population across the globe is around 150,000, if I'm not wrong, roughly.
That's correct.
150,000.
Yes.
And 65 to 70% of that population is concentrated in the western parts of India.
Yeah. Gujarat and Maharashtra mainly.
Yeah, Gujarat and Maharashtra. So what is the reason for this downfall in the population of the Parsis?
When 1,300 years back, when the Parsis came from Iran to India, they were a few thousands.
Right.
Okay. A very good Hindu king, Indian king, whom we in our tradition call him Jadav Rana.
Okay.
He gave us refuge. Okay. And it was clear, as is the story of sugar in the milk, that popular story you must be aware, or afterwards I'll tell you, but that we will live harmoniously with the people over here, because we were a handful. And one way to live harmoniously with the people is not to play with the religion, not to convert. So that idea was there. And even in Zoroastrian religion, originally the idea of conversion was never there. Intermarriage idea was not there. So after coming from Iran to India, we saw to it that conversion should not happen, intermarriages should not happen. So there was a marginal increase in the population. Okay, but that was maximum population that is recorded in India is 130-40,000, not beyond that. Because even in the past generations, you see people had 3 children, 4 children, 5 children, even sometimes 7 and 8 children. If you look at the history of 3 generations past, of course, the mortality was higher in those times, but still there were more children. So my point is that the Parsis in India, their population was never more than about 150,000. And the reason for that is that we did not convert from inside to outside or from outside to inside, and did not intermarry. And all the figures that we have, the records that we have, that also show the same thing. Now, after the opportunities opened up in the West, study opportunities, business opportunities, job opportunities. So in the last 150 years, the Parsis have started emigrating outside to the US, to Canada, to Europe, especially to London. And in the last about 20 years, 30 years, to New Zealand and Australia. Also the Middle East.
Right.
So now you see the Parsis have spread out globally. There are Parsis everywhere, almost in the world, in almost all the continents. But in India, the number became lesser then. So in India, then there are now about 65,000. And the rest are spread all across the globe. Now your question was how we are only in the western part of India.
Yeah.
The reason is that when we came from Iran to India, The western coast was the closest because we came by water, we came by ships, boats. So first we went to a harbor called Deluge, and from there, after 17, 18 years, we came further south to the western harbor of Sanjan. And there, the good King Jadav Rana gave us asylum with some conditions, and we were very grateful and graceful, and we started prospering in Sanjan. And then the Sanjan is today also in Gujarat, very close to the Maharashtra border, Gujarat-Maharashtra border.
Right.
So then gradually we started going all around Sanjan. So we started migrating to Bharuch, Surat, Navsari, Khambat, that is Kembe, Ankleshwar. And then about 300 years back, when Bombay was being developed as a port and a harbor, and Parsis were very good shipbuilders. And one of the best shipbuilder in Surat was a gentleman called Lauji Wadia. So he was specially invited to Bombay, and then other shipbuilders came, and opportunities opened up for business, for work, and gradually from there, Parsis started emigrating from Gujarat. So for almost 1,000 years in India, 900 to 1,000 years, we were in and around Sanjan and Gujarat. And then in the last 300 years, because of business and trade opportunities, the Parsis started coming to Bombay and then started contributing to the building and progress of Bombay as Bombay was building, as it was getting modernized, as the Britishers started establishing themselves and seeing this as a commercial hub. So in that way, today you can say that about 30,000 of Parsis are in Bombay. 25 to 30,000. And there are, of course, elsewhere in Maharashtra also, but not as many. There are quite a few in Pune also. Then there are some in Nagpur, etc. But the most concentration is most in Mumbai.
Okay. Sir, you just mentioned about the inter-religious marriages in Parsi religion. I'm asking this with a very open mind and just to understand your viewpoint. Right. I read somewhere that if a Parsi woman marriages out of religion, she is deprived of all the basic rights, and that could also be to an extent that she is not allowed to attend the funeral of a close one. So, is that right, or what is the situation? I think you would be the right person to tell us.
Yeah, see, Zoroastrians have always believed that religion, like everything else, comes from descent. Okay, as you get your genes and chromosomes,
right,
through descent, you also get your religious inputs in a way from generation to generation. And Zoroastrian religion have always believed in marrying within the fold, within the religion, within the community. So that was always been the idea. There have been exceptions, of course, no doubt. Exceptions happen everywhere. So there were exceptions in this, but by and large, the stand of the religion is that a Zoroastrian, Parsi Zoroastrian, has to marry another Parsi Zoroastrian. That is the requirement of the religion and the community. Now, of course, there have been marriages. Men have married ladies from outside the community. Ladies have married men from outside the community. And like that, there have been some very prominent people who also had married non-Zoroastrian ladies. And when that issue arose about 100 years back, they went to the court about their rights. And the court, in a way, as a part of that judgment, they defined what a Parsi is. And in that, they said that if a father is a Parsi, the children will get all the rights of the father, including the religious rights. So based on that more than 100-year it is called obiter dicta, means part of a judgment. gradually some priests started accepting a marriage in which the man was Parsis and a lady was a non-Parsi. But even to this day, the majority of the priests do not accept this. The majority of the high priests do not accept this.
Okay.
Now, they started accepting it because it was part of a legal judgment. Now, when the idea of equality started arising, even the ladies also demanded that even we should get the same rights. But this country and Zoroastrian religion also being a patrilineal thing, a lady generally marries into the house and the family, and that also meant the religion of the male. In fact, in many religions, the lady is expected to convert first before undergoing the religious ritual for marriage of that religion. So, for that reason, such a lady has been deemed to be not a part of the religion. And that's why this thing is now sub judice, so I can't say much about this because they have already gone into the court asking for their rights. But this is the present position, that it is not the religion which is discriminating between men and women. Religion has a constant stand, and I would say the majority of the priest and the high priest also have this constant stand. But the men have got this precedence or this greater right because of a 100-year-old part of a judgment.
Okay. Now, sir, coming to Zoroastrianism. So, the name Zoroastrianism, I believe, comes from the prophet Zoroaster, right? And that's where the descendant starts. And I believe the Zoroastrianism, this is a name given by the Greeks, the Zoroaster. I think
Yes.
the actual name was Mazdayashna, if I'm not wrong.
No, I'll tell you.
Yeah.
The actual name of the prophet was Zarathustra. Zarathustra. And the Greeks, when they wrote about him, much later, thousands of years later, such was the impact that he had created, that after even thousands of years, he was referred to by the Greek writers like Hermippus, Xanthos, Theodorus, Diodorus. They wrote about him. And they wrote his name as Zoroaster.
Okay.
So now Zarathustra is in the Avesthan language. And it literally means one having yellow camels or old camels or mature camels. Now there are two ways of understanding this. First is very literally. That time being agrarian time, pastoral time, many names had suffixes which ended in horse or cow or milk or camel. So from that point of view, you can understand that such names were common to those Indo-Iranian times and period. But going into the inner meaning, it is explained that Zarathustra means one having a higher consciousness, because the word Ushtra also refers to consciousness, and Zara means mature, that is higher, old. So the word Zarathustra has two meanings. One is a literal meaning, meaning one having aged camels or yellow camels, and the other is one having higher consciousness. And the Greeks, when they use the word Zoroaster, that is literally translated as the golden star. Okay. Zoro means golden and star means star. Okay. Now you mentioned another word, Mazdayasni.
Yeah.
Now Mazdayasni was a belief system which evolved thousands of years before Zarathustra was born, before Prophet Zarathustra was born. It was a belief system which was given by God to special people who are, we consider them as mini prophets. And in our religion, they are called Sotians. So it was a collection of beliefs. Mazdayasni was a collection of beliefs. And why is it called Mazdayasni? Because the word Mazdayasni means worshippers of Mazda. Okay. And Mazda is the name of God. Mazda is a part of the word Ahura Mazda, which is the full name of God, which later on became Hormuzd.
Okay.
So Hormuzd, Mazda, Ahura Mazda are all the names of God, and literally means Lord of Wisdom. Mazda means wisdom. So this belief system, which was there much before Prophet Zarathustra came on the scene, and even Prophet Zarathustra was born in this belief system called Mazdayasni. And the basic teaching of the Mazdayasni was worshipping one God Mazda. So the idea of worshipping one God was there right from the beginning before a religion developed.
Okay. So while we will park the overall story of Prophet Zarathustra, Zoroaster, for the later part of the podcast, I would like you to tell us how this religion of Zoroaster, where is the beginning of Zoroastrianism? Where did it begin? Right. And there is also my second part of question would be, because I think you mentioned in the when we talk about the Parsis that you came through sea to to India. I think there is a connection between the Zoroastrianism, Zoroastrianism scriptures, your religious books, and there is also very thin bond. I mean, connection between Hinduism and Zoroastrianism. So how that happened? So first, I would like you to explain where did this Zoroastrianism started?
So Ronik, you must have heard the term Indo-Iranians
Right.
and Proto-Indo-Iranians.
Okay.
Okay, so Indo-Iranian is a term which means a time when the Indians and the Iranians were staying together. And this is hoary antiquity, at least about 10,000-11,000 years back. So today, roughly, we call these people Aryans. But in the religious scriptures of the Zoroastrians, they are called Iryana. Iryana, which means noble people. The literal meaning of the word Iryana is noble.
Sorry, sir. I will just interrupt you. I think this has got nothing to do with the British term Aryans, right?
No.
This is completely separate.
This is totally different. This was much before even English language was born.
Huh.
This was much before even English language. Forget Britishers, even English language was not born there. But this term, and the Hindus called it Arya because, as you mentioned, the language of the Sanskrit language of the Indians and the Avesta language of the Zoroastrians are similar because they are a common origin. They are the common mother.
Okay.
And the mother had three main daughters. But we'll come to them later on, these daughter languages. But first, your question was, when were they born? When was Zoroastrian religion started?
Yes.
Now, in this Proto-Indo-Iranian period, which was staying in northern Eurasian plains, they were staying in the northern Eurasian plains. And for one reason or the other, they were happy, they were thriving, they had a common philosophy, they had a common theology, and because of the cold that started getting more and more, and because of more pestilence, they started migrating southwards. So starting from the northern Eurasian plains to what we today call parts of Russia and then parts of Central Asia, they kept on migrating and settling. So there were about 2 to 3, at least 3 such migrations.
It started from the North Pole, right?
Almost near the North Pole.
Almost near the North Pole.
Yeah, but this was before what we call the Great Deluge, the Great Flood, because the Zoroastrian religious history starts before the Great Deluge. Okay. The starting of the Mazdayasni belief system started before the Great Deluge.
Sir, you will have to talk a bit about the Great Deluge so that there is a perspective that the listeners have.
Yeah, so the Great Deluge is a geological event of global importance because almost all the religions, cultures, and civilizations of the world, you name it, the Indian, the Iranian, the Christian, the Greek, the Babylonian, and many other, most others. They have a story when there was a great flood and a hero guided by God saved some part of the population.
I think what the Christianism calls it the Noah's Ark story, if I'm not wrong.
Exactly. The Christians calls it the Noah's Ark story. The Hindus call it Manu Smriti. In Manu Smriti, this is one of the avatars of Vishnu Bhagwan, the Matsya avatar.
Matsya avatar.
Yeah, it told Manu to save the world.
Right.
Okay, then in the Babylonian, this thing, it's a hero called Gilgamesh, a hero king called Gilgamesh. And like that, in other civilizations also, there are such heroes. In the Iranian part of the world, we call him Ima, who later on came to be known as Jamshid. Ima or Jamshid. But you know, why is this such a huge commonality wherever you see on the globe, in whichever context, this idea about there being a very devastating flood which would destroy almost 90% of the world, and only the chosen few are saved by the grace of God. That idea has been there. So the story of the Zoroastrian religion starts before this deluge, this flood. And you know, we have Ice Age. We have had several Ice Ages before this. I think now we are in the phase after the fifth Ice Age. And there is a period of warmth before the next Ice Age would come. So we are in that period, and this is called the Holocene period. And in this period, in this warmth, we have started this civilization. But immediately after the Ice Age, after some years after the Ice Age, there have been period of great prosperity. And that great prosperity resulted in the southward migrations.
Okay.
So when your question, how did the Zoroastrians come to where they are now? So as I said, before the Great Deluge, people were living near the North Pole, this Proto-Indo-Iranian group, because it was not so cold at that time over there. The coldness came after the Earth's axis tilted because of this catastrophic event that took place at that time. Cataclysmic event.
It is said that the axis got tilted,
Yes.
and it was not as cold what it is now.
Exactly. It was not as cold. So that everything gets into perspective once you study this history, once you study the story of the religion. That before the time of this great hero who is mentioned in the Iranian scriptures as Ima, people were living almost near the North Pole. There were 2 or 3 other Socians, whom we call the saviors, who were also living there. The Mazda-Hasni belief system was also there. After the deluge happened, he saved them on a mountain. This Enoch saved them on a mountain top. Okay. And the Zoroastrian story is a bit different because we were perhaps the northernmost civilization. So it talks about severe winter and then severe snowstorm. And then the floods because of that severe winter and snowstorm. And another big difference in the story of this great flood among other civilizations and Zoroastrian religion, one major difference is that almost all other stories believe that it was an act of God to punish mankind. But Zoroastrian religion sees it a bit differently. It says it was an act of the devil, whom we call Angramayni. Because according to Zoroastrian religion, God does not do anything to hurt or harm mankind. So God gave Ima the message to save. But the event, we are told, happened because of the Satan or devil who brought about this event. So
Angramayni, as we call it.
Angramayni, yes, very true. Angramayni. So this is what is the story. But then after that great deluge, King Ima once again ruled. And once again, there was lots of prosperity. Civilization started developing and people started coming southwards. And in this southward development, the first stop, as we say, was what we call today the northern part of Russia.
Hmm. Hmm.
The second stop, what we say, was Central Asia.
Okay.
And the third stop is where we are almost just now.
So Central Asia would be somewhere around Afghanistan area.
Afghanistan, Turkmenistan, all those areas.
Okay.
Okay. What we call the Oxus and Zaxartes rivers, Amu Darya, Sir Darya, that province, where lots of excavations are also done. The Gobekli Tepe and all those have been discovered over there in this region. This site is very rich in archaeology. So
Right.
this is the reason, because these great civilizations were there thousands of years back.
Okay. Okay. Now, sir, the story about Zoroastrianism is also that when this Persian execution happened, a lot of Zoroastrian people were killed, and rest then
Refuge.
they refuge
Yeah.
towards in India. They moved towards India, right? So when this Persian execution happened, I think a lot of the scriptures, your ancient scriptures that were there, got lost because they were intentionally, destroyed. So now, when your Avesta language, Zoroastrianism Avesta language, which is there, I think it took a lot from Sanskrit to rebuild it. Can you please explain a bit about that? The religious scriptures of Zoroastrianism and how it is connected. I think you said that there is one mother language and there are three daughter languages.
So the one mother language is now dead, lost to the world.
Okay.
The three daughter languages are Sanskrit, Avesta, and the old European languages.
Okay.
Okay. Now, the Avestan scriptures were transmitted for thousands of years orally. There were 21 families of priests who memorized the scripture. Then much later, when writing gradually started building up, they were written down.
Okay.
But the first destruction of the primitively written scriptures happened at the hands of Alexander the Macedonian. The first destruction of the Avestan texts, which were primitively written down on tablets, etc., was done by Alexander the Macedonian, whom the world calls Alexander the Great. He destroyed it in 330 BC.
Okay.
But then they were again rewritten after thousands of years in a language specially created for writing it. And that language is called the Avesta language. So in the 4th century after Christ, the process of rewriting the 21 volumes started. But then there was a parallel process of memorization of these scriptures. Like even the Hindu and the Buddhist tradition is that the scriptures are memorized along with being written. So that tradition was there even among the Zoroastrians. So these scriptures were written down in the 4th century after Christ.
Okay.
Now the Zoroastrians lost their empire in the middle of the 7th century after Christ in Iran. The Sasanian downfall because of the Arab conquest. Now some people also went to China, some went towards Europe, some stayed there, some were converted, many were killed, and some came to India. Now it was a very difficult period. So what they brought with them were only those things which were memorized, not something which was written down. Okay. In Iran, there were some written down texts were still there till the 12th, 13th, 14th centuries.
Okay.
But then other attackers like Genghis Khan, Halaku Khan, Temur Lane, they gradually destroyed everything else later on. But those who came to India had everything in their memory. And that was then again written down. But that was just about 10% of the original. So today, 90% of the Zoroastrian texts in Avesta language have been lost forever. We hope that we find it in some lost cave or somewhere, but whatever. But today we only have 10% of those texts.
Okay.
Now, the Zoroastrian priest had a knowledge about this, meaning of this, but not in a scientific way, not in a philological way. Now, about 200 years back, Iranologist called a Frenchman who was studying Iranian and Indian languages called Anquetil du Perron.
Okay.
He enlisted himself in the East India Company because he knew there are people in India who might understand this Iranian language, because he had found manuscripts of this Avesta language, but he was not able to understand it. So by enlisting himself in the East India Company, he came to India. At that time, Surat was the stronghold of the Zoroastrians. So he went to Surat. There he met a priest who was able to explain to him some of the nuances of the Avesta language. Now this Anquetil du Perron realized that this language is so similar to the Sanskrit language. So he took back several manuscripts back to Europe. And there they compared the Avesta language and the Sanskrit language. And they realized that, my God, there's such a lot of similarity. No doubt the world calls them sisters. So what some of the European scholars did, and it was a great thing to do, was recreate the grammar of the Avesta language on the basis of the Sanskrit grammar. Because the declensions, the noun suffixes, the adjectives, the sentence formation, everything is, you can say, 70% similar. Even the philology, even the words, the etymology, they are so similar. That's because of the common descent. The reason why this is so similar, because the ancestors of the Zoroastrians and the Indians have stayed together for thousands of years, and this language is developed as a common language.
And is that the reason that Zoroastrianism shares a common heritage with the Vedic religion of Hinduism?
Yes, definitely. Definitely, there are several names of several gods. Like there is one god called Mitra among the Hindus, Mitra. And the Zoroastrians have called a divine being. We have only one god. We don't call them gods. We call them Yazads. Yazads are divine beings of a stature which is lower to God.
Okay. So God would be Ahura Mazda.
Only one god, Ahura Mazda.
Only Ahura Mazda. And these are angels, if we call them?
Yeah, loosely you can call them angels.
Okay.
We have our own names for that. So the highest among the angels are called Ameshaspans.
Sir, just for listeners' perspective, so as in Hinduism, we have Vishnu, Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh, the three top lords. Then we have the gods, as you call it, Indra, Varun Dev, and all that. So, is that the same structure that you're talking about?
No, there's a lot of dissimilarity in this, because firstly, the Zoroastrian divine beings don't take human form. They are only as spirit or energy. We don't see them in a mortal material form.
Okay.
So that is the difference. And see, I'll show you the Zoroastrian hierarchy. On top is one god, Ahura Mazda. Below him are 7 archangels.
Okay.
Archangels means higher angels. Okay, and we call them Ameshaspans, means the bountiful immortals. Below them there are numerous Yazads. Yazads are other angels. And the similarity is more akin to the Christian religion than the Hindu religion in that sense, because even the Christian religion have got angels and archangels.
Right.
So that way the similarity, if you want to see, it is more closer to the hierarchical similarity is more similar to Christianity than to Hinduism.
Okay. Okay.
Because
Yes, sir, please continue.
this Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh, one is the creator, one is the nurturer, and one is the destroyer.
Destroyer.
Yeah. So that trilogy we don't have in the God aspect. We have him as the creator and the nourisher, the nurturer. But the destroyer aspect is not a part of the Zoroastrian concept of Ahura Mazda.
Okay.
You see, so there are some theological and philosophical dissimilarities.
Okay. You're talking about the religious beliefs, Mitra and Anahita.
Yeah.
I think Mitra is the god of contracts or something.
Exactly.
And then you have Anahita,
Exactly. Friendship.
God of conceiving, which helps in conceiving and giving birth.
Yes. Fertility, conception, childbirth, postnatal care.
Okay.
Then there is a divine being called Home in Zoroastrian religion, which among the Hindus is the Som, god Som. He is a god of health, healing, etc.
So is it related to the Somras that we call?
Yes, the
drink
Somras, the drink Somras, which is there in the Hindu religion, even in the Zoroastrian religion, it is called home juice, homa juice, and it is made from a twig of a particular plant. Okay, a very small amount of the twig is pounded with water, goat's milk, and well water, and pomegranate leaves, and that drink is made, which is health giving, healing, and energy giving.
So sorry, sir. I will again have to just for my own understanding and perspective. So when you call Som and Home in Zoroastrianism, this is a spiritual drink, right?
Yes, this drink is prepared by priest while performing a ritual.
Okay. So is there any level of intoxication that we're talking out here?
No, no intoxication. No intoxication. There is no intoxication in that. People generally there's a misconception that there is an intoxicant and all these things are there, but it is not there. You know, it's a very dried small part of a twig. And that itself is energy giving. There's no intoxicant aspect in it at all.
Okay. Okay. So now, Ramiyar sir, talking about any religious scripture and religious books, there is mention of God, there is mention of evil, right? So we called Dev and Asur, right? So what is there mentioned in the Avestha text when you differentiate between God? I mean, as you mentioned that Ahura Mazda is the top and Angriya Manyasu is the evil.
Yeah.
So what's that Avestha text talk about God and evil? And so if you say in Hinduism as well, so whenever just say we say Paap in Hindi, right? Whenever the Paap in the world will increase, Lord Vishnu will take an avatar to destroy it, right? I think there is a verse in our Bhagavad Gita as well. Yada yada hi dharmasya. So what does it say in Avestha?
What was the initial part of your question?
So my question is that in every
Asura and Asura,
Asura, Dev and Asura basically.
Yeah. So see, good and evil are two polarities in a way. You can see it in many different ways. But good and evil are the main planks of the Zoroastrian philosophy. Okay, you can call it white and black, positive or negative. These two polarities have been there in all the religions. Now, as the Indian religion and the Zoroastrian religion develop simultaneously, okay, the concept of Asur and Dev also was developing simultaneously.
Okay.
Then there was a divide. The Zoroastrians settled in Iran. Okay, there was a peaceful migration and the Indians peacefully went further eastwards. But there was a difference of opinion before they separated. And it is because of this difference of opinion that the idea of Asura and Deva in the Zoroastrian philosophy and in the Indian philosophy is different. Now, in the Zoroastrian philosophy, if you see, the word Asura is written as Ahura. Because Sa in Sanskrit language, it comes as Ha in Avesta language. So we call Ahura as the good divine beings. And the word Deva, the Zoroastrian religion sees them as the negative divine beings, those who
It's just the opposite.
harm the asuras.
Okay.
Now, see, interestingly, in the Hindu religion, if you see, way back in the Vedas, in the Rig Vedic text, the asuras were still good. You don't see them as bad. Then in the Puranas, they start becoming somewhat good, somewhat bad, somewhat good, somewhat bad. Okay? And then in the later times, the asuras are seen. The good asuras and bad asuras, both asuras can be seen in the Puranas. And then in the later text, the asuras more or less become evil only. And the devas, of course, have been good. In the Zoroastrian text, ahura have always been seen as good and positive. And the word comes from, we derive it from the root aha, to be, to exist, means source of life. So the word asura or ahura, according to us, means the source of life. And because life is sacred, so that's why ahura are considered sacred. And all good divine beings can be called ahuras. So even the title of the god, I told you originally the name of the god was Mazda, as in Mazda Yasni.
Right.
It was only later on that the title Ahura was added to it. So it became Ahura Mazda.
Ahura Mazda.
Okay. And then all the collective of all good divine beings are called Ahura Ongo in the Avesta language. So that is seen as something positive. And this polarity of Asura, Ahura, and Deva Deva is because of the rift that happened among this Indo-Iranian group. But apart from this small division, you can see a lot of similarity between the two. You can see a lot of similarity between the text of the Indians and the text of the Zoroastrians. Starting from the language, the name of the divine beings, even the rituals. We call our basic ritual yasna. And in the Hindu religion, one of the basic rituals is the yagna. Agni plays an important role in both the religions.
Okay.
In Rig Veda itself, Agni, a lot of chapters are devoted to Agni, Agni Dev. Agni is given the status of a Dev, a god in the Hindu religion. And we also regard fire as one of the most important physical creations of God. So then there are many such similarities that we can find even in the words, even in the grammar, in everything.
Okay. So what does Zoroastrianism say about meditation and spirituality? Where do you place it? How do you say it?
Meditation means using your mind for a good cause. And I think all the religions tell us to use the mind for a good cause. Now, Zoroastrian religion places a lot of emphasis on the mind or mana. You said the word for the evil is angramainyu, right?
Right.
Angramainyu means the crooked mind.
Okay.
Or crooked spirit, because you can't see spirit. You have to visualize it through the mind. So there also you require the mind. So without the mind, you are nowhere, not in the physical world, not in the intellectual world, not in the spiritual world. In fact, we are told that even God has a mind. And the first thought of God was to create this universe. So in that sense, at the macrocosmic level, mind has a lot of importance. We talk about cosmic intelligence, etc. And at a micro level, at our level, at the human being level, the most important organ in the body, of course, the heart keeps us alive. But what gives quality to the life is the mind.
Right.
Now, if you don't know how to use the mind, you are gone. You can't do anything worthwhile with your life. So that's why meditation helps in getting the best out of your mind. And one of the understanding of meditation in Zoroastrian religion is to bind your mind focus it on the sounds of prayers, so that least amount of stray thoughts come there. Because stray thoughts are a burden to the mind which wants to relax. And a mind which is relaxed and focused is a powerhouse. But a mind which is not relaxed, not focused, cannot achieve anything. And even the mind has several levels and layers. So we have to use the several layers and levels of the mind to see that we get the optimum out of the conscious mind, so that we take it to higher levels. But we can achieve nothing in life without using the mind in the right way. So it's very wisely said that the mind is your best friend and worst enemy. And in Zoroastrian religion, the very second divine being after God, God is called Aura Mazda. And the second divine being, second in stature after God, if you go to see, is called Brahman.
Brahman.
Again, man over here, remember? Brahman. Okay. Baha means good, way. Vah. Okay. In Sanskrit, the word is Vasu. Okay.
So is that where the name Brahman also comes from?
Yes, Brahman Irani, the very famous actor. All of us know him. So his name in stature, if you go to the look at the spirituality of the religion, it comes only next to Ormus. Because unless and until you have the good mind, you can't get God in you. You can't get other divine beings in you. You can't live in harmony with the rest of the world. You can't do anything. You'll be a nervous wreck. So meditation helps you to harness your mind. Of course, there are hundreds of forms of meditations. Every religion, every belief system, every tradition tells you, and all are right. I'm not saying each one has a different take on meditation. But the Zoroastrian idea about meditation is saying prayers in a particular language, so as we are able to focus the mind on the sound of the words, so that that mind is attached to the words and its sound, and so stray thoughts do not hamper the mind. Mind can remain focused and relaxed and achieve its higher purposes. Because mind has two purposes. It also needs to go within the body, also needs to look after the body, also needs to give medicines to the body, and it also needs to take us to a higher level of existence. All this is possible only if you are able to control the mind, at least to a certain extent.
So, like we have the Gayatri mantra in Hinduism. So, is there any mantra that you, in Zoroastrian people, use in their regular prayers? If you're allowed to say it out.
Yeah.
If you can recite it for us.
Yeah. See, we have, as I said, the prayers that are left with us are about 10% of the origin.
Right.
These as prayers, we are not supposed to share.
Okay.
But there are three mantras, small, short mantras, which are so powerful that they are beyond any rules.
Okay.
Beyond any laws of purity, ritual purity, rules regarding prayers. So they can be uttered. So we have one such mantra called the Ahuna Var. The word Ahuna Var means the will of the Lord.
Okay.
And in it, the will of the Lord is given, like unfolding the universe. Okay. It's a very short mantra, only 21 words. It is poetic. And it is supposed to be the mantra by which God created the creations. So as the Hindu brothers have Om mantra, the mantra of Om, the Zoroastrians have this Ahunavar mantra, because the first words of Ahunavar is Ahun. And if you see the sound of Aum and Ahun, it is very similar. Okay, beginning, ending, and middle, all three are similar. Aum and Ahun. Okay, so that 21 word, 3-line mantra, I'll just chant before you.
Sure.
Yatha huvairyo atharatush ashat chit hacha Vangeush dasda manango Shautananam Angeush Mazdai Shatrim cha ahurai a Indre gubyo dadat vastarim. Thank you.
Thank
So
you.
this is the mantra called Aunavar. It is the mantra of creation. It's supposed to be very powerful, very helpful. It's a weapon. It's a shield. It serves many purposes. And Zoroastrians are advised to always use this chant like a Hindi chant for themselves.
Okay. So when you say a shield, is it a shield to shield your mind and your body against the negative thoughts? And when I say negative thoughts, it could be probably because here we also talk about lot about paranormal and spirits and all that. So is it a guard to the paranormals?
Yeah, especially negative unseen influences, which includes thoughts and other energies
Hmm.
and other beings, unseen beings. Thought is also an energy. So
Hmm.
a negative thought is negative energy. So it shields a person against negative thoughts, negative energies, and negative beings.
So like we chant the Hanuman Chalisa, is it similar to that?
Yeah,
If I
it
have to
can you
put it.
can call it similar to that. It's the mantra for protection. It's a chant for protection.
Okay. Speaking about protection and spirits, negative energies. So, is there a dark side to Zoroastrianism? When I say dark side, is there the paranormal side, the spirits? So, what exactly is there? How do you differentiate, and what exactly are you protecting yourself against when you're saying out this mantra?
Yeah, Ronik, see, I said in the beginning that there is polarity everywhere in the universe.
Right,
You just
right.
can't accept it.
Hmm, hmm,
And so there is polarity even in the spirit world. There is good and evil. And Zoroastrian religion puts a lot of emphasis on this aspect. So there
hmm.
is one set of creations called Spenta Mainu, the good creations.
Okay.
And there are some creations which Zoroastrians believe, which Angra Mainu, the crooked spirit,
Hmm,
has controlled himself controlled and uses them for his purpose.
okay.
So good and evil both are there in the universe. And the religion itself, religion would not make sense
Hmm,
if you don't believe in unseen forces.
right.
What does the word religion mean? The word religion means bringing together of the seen and the unseen. Religion means,
Okay.
and what every religion tries to do is bring together the seen and the unseen world and helps us mortals to live harmoniously with the unseen faculties that we have within
Hmm.
us and the unseen world that is around us. But of course, because of the law of polarity, there are many negatives. So we have to protect ourselves against them because it is in their basic nature to be negative. You can't just help it. So we need to
Right.
protect ourselves.
Okay. Sir, in Hinduism also, we also talk about Kala Jadoo, which is black magic. We talk about possessions, right? So, is there a flavor of black magic or possessions which is described in Zoroastrianism?
Yeah, as I said, many of the text of Zoroastrian religion has been
Huh,
lost. But
huh,
this idea of black magic means using energy for negative purpose.
hmm,
Using energy for negative purpose is Kala Jadoo.
right.
So that concept is there. Then once again, there are maybe spirits or
Hmm,
beings whose functions or whose expectations in this world have not been met. So they are trying to meet it their own way. So of course, that also we sometimes see it as negative beings. So Zoroastrian religion does very clearly have this idea that yes, there are evil beings and there are many names for them also, like Jaduan, Pariyan, Kikan, Karafan. Like there are terminologies for it, but a detailed description of that is not available.
what would be this Jaduan, Karayan, Pikan, Karifan?
Jaduan means black magicians.
Okay.
Pariyan means ladies who deal in black magic, which then
Witches, if you have to call it
loosely, because
loosely.
witches has a very big connotation, so we
Right,
won't
right.
go into that.
Yeah, yeah.
But then Kikan are good, are kings who use their power in a negative way, and Karafans are priests who use their power in a negative way. So like that, there is a list of things, and there are prayers also, that if one perceives that there is something like that, then those prayers need to be done.
So, sir, this is my last question to you. What does so we talked a lot about the Ahura Mazda and the gods Yazdas. We talk about Mitra and Anahita. So when talking about Anahita, you mentioned procreation, you mentioned prenatal care. So what does Zoroastrianism talk about procreation and sex overall? So is that if I'm just talking about in societies, when we talk about sex, the eyebrows are raised and all that. So how do you perceive that?
See, basically in Zoroastrian religion, sex done in the right manner, in a controlled manner, in the manner that in which it
Hmm,
needs to be done, is supposed to be sacred, because reproduction is sacred.
hmm,
Reproduction is important because humanity has to grow.
right.
Every human being is supposed to be a soldier of God. When a human being lives in the right way,
Hmm,
he becomes a soldier of God. So, sex has never been seen in an. Of course, in this world, you can use anything for a positive and negative purpose.
right. Right.
Whether it's a knife, a sword, a pen, or your finger, you can use anything. So, and another thing, excess and deficiency of everything is also bad.
Hmm, hmm,
So, keeping a idea of balance in mind, and keeping the idea of right and wrong in mind, keeping the idea of mutual respect and love in mind. If you go to see, sex done within the parameters of society and religion is something which is considered a part of religion, and it is necessary, because in Zoroastrian religion,
hmm.
marriage is considered very important, and it is also said in our text that God prefers a married man to an unmarried man.
Okay.
God prefers a married man with children to a married man
Okay.
without children. So that goes on to show that procreation is something which God wants.
Okay.
It's an important part of the religion, it's an important part of life. And so it is something which is very healthy, and in the right manner, if it is done, it is good at all the levels of existence: physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. At all the levels, it can help a
Hmm.
person.
Ramesh, so there is so much to talk and so much to learn from a person like you. Uh, but I think we should stop this podcast here and save something for the next episode because this has already become a pretty heavy discussion. I think
Yeah.
for an intro, this was a brilliant episode to have as an intro to Zoroastrianism. I think there are a lot to discuss. I think we can talk about Prophet Zoroaster's overall story, and there are a lot to discuss, I believe. Sir, I had a wonderful time. I had a
Me
really
too.
wonderful time
Me too. It was great talking to you, Ronik.
to understand Zoroastrianism, to understand from a person who is so learned. Sir, how do you get this knowledge? So you are a PhD scholar, and but please let us know how do you have this so plethora of knowledge with you?
See, it's very simple. I am in the field of teaching.
Okay,
That is my job. And
right,
I have to be best in what I do. I have to make my students happy. I have to make convince those who come to me. So
right,
it has been my constant endeavor to keep on learning, because unless
hmm,
I know, I can't transmit.
right,
And of course, it has helped me a lot. This knowledge, this information, and how it transmits into wisdom, it is very helpful. So, and another thing is, I've always preferred things in a simple way and in small parts. So that
right.
has helped me in this context, that whenever I need to teach, I try to keep it as short as possible, as small as possible, and as simple as possible. and that has helped up till now.
Thank you, Ramiyar sir, and we definitely look forward to another episode with you
Thank
to
you very
speak
much,
more on
Ronik. It was
Zoroastrianism, sir.
great talking to you.
Thank you, sir. Thank
Thank
you
you.
so much.